When you look at products from any category, there are just a handful of brands that stand out as true American icons, like Coca-Cola and Levi's. In the automotive field, there is clearly one brand that is not only the American icon, but also the international symbol of freedom and adventure. In fact, the name of the brand is one of the most recognizable words on the planet, and that's Jeep. Everyone knows Jeep got its start as a military workhorse, but it quickly became more than just a vehicle. It became a trusted friend. Some 6 decades later, that unique relationship still exists. Jeep was not just a pioneer of the earliest four-wheel drive systems. It's been responsible for many of the advancements in four-wheel drive over the last 50-plus years. Still today, Jeep is that free-spirited friend it's always been. Leadership, heritage, innovation. That's what makes a brand a true icon. And that's what makes Jeep, Jeep.
August 6, 1999. More than 5,000 people have traveled from all over the world to the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia to celebrate and pay tribute to a vehicle Time magazine once called one of the top 10 cars in the 20th century that mattered. Over the years, the Jeep brand has had many labels and multiple personalities. Half car, half truck. It was the first sport utility vehicle, and now is the last word in automotive power, performance, and endurance. It can't help itself. It's in the genes. The Jeep brand was just born that way. In the late 1930s, as hostilities were beginning to spread in Europe, the United States Army was in search of a hero. The military was looking for a new kind of scout car that could fight and help win a new kind of war.
The Army was looking for something maneuverable, lighter, smaller, something that presented less of a profile.
They were looking for a vehicle that was low. They were looking for a vehicle that was very agile, that could move around, that could be fast, go down a highway at 50, and also be very slow off-road to conquer some pretty bad terrain.
On June 17, 1940, the Army sent requests for bids to over 100 different companies. But with near impossible specifications for weight and size, and only a 49-day deadline, only 2 automakers submitted bids to build prototypes of the Army's new all-terrain vehicle. Willis Overland in Toledo, once run by automotive pioneer Walter P. Chrysler, bid for the contract. So did American Bantam, a struggling automotive company based in Butler, Pennsylvania. Bantam was no stranger to the small car market. Like its predecessor, the American Austin Company, Bantam was well known for producing several models of mini cars.
American Bantam was almost to the wall. They had laid off their engineering staff. The only way they could enter a proposal was to hire an outside engineer. They hired a guy from Detroit named Carl Probst. He was an independent engineer, and he piled into his 38 Buick and drove on through, apparently arrived during the night. By 2 o'clock the following afternoon, he was at his drawing board, and by the end of the week, he had the parameters laid out for what became the Jeep vehicle.
On Monday, September 23, 1940, at Camp Hullabird, Maryland, the Army's new four-wheel drive light command and reconnaissance car went on its first test drive. Upon his return, Major Herbert Laws said, "I have driven every unit the services have purchased for the last 20 years. This vehicle is going to be absolutely outstanding. I believe this unit will make history."
The reaction was wonderful. The military was very impressed with the performance of the original Bantam Jeep. Four-wheel drive had been around, but it had been used pretty much on heavier trucks. But the trucks would still bog down. And so finally, when they put it under a quarter ton, it had enough power for its weight to be very maneuverable and very mobile.
Still, as impressive as the Bantam prototype was, this stunning new vehicle, now nicknamed the Blitz Buggy, was not without its flaws.
Bantam designed it, but the Bantam proposal had a 40 horsepower Continental engine, wasn't powerful enough. Meanwhile, Willis, thanks to their chief engineer, Barney Roos, had a 61 horsepower engine. Barney Roos reworked the old Willis engine that they had been using, enlarged the ports to give it better breathing and stronger bearings and stuff, and boosted it from 48 to 61 horsepower. That engine was sturdy. They called it a Go Devil engine, and it really was.
It started with the GIs. Hundreds, thousands of them drove these rugged vehicles all through the war. They swore those power buggies would go any place and do anything.
In addition to not having enough power, the government was also concerned that Bantam couldn't meet the production demands of its new power buggy. As a result, this remarkable new vehicle, although conceived by Bantam, was now designed, engineered, and built by Willis. In order to help satisfy the production demands of the war effort, Ford Motor Company was also asked to assemble a limited number of Willis-designed Jeep vehicles. Immediately, these all-new quarter-ton, four-wheel drive general-purpose vehicles were put to use doing exactly what they were built to do, and in the process capturing the hearts and minds of every GI who drove them.
General George Marshall referred to it as America's greatest single contribution to warfare.
Wars are fought where the battle leads it. The Jeep vehicle had the ability to follow the battle wherever the battle led. You can be in fields, mountains, woods, plains, water.
Mud, snow, jungle territory, sand, places where these GIs certainly were aware that any conventional vehicle would be stuck.
The GIs could go places with it. They could go where there were no roads.
They marveled at its versatility. Why, there wasn't a darn thing the little giant couldn't do. It was designed just right. It was beautiful.
The promise of the Jeep vehicle was much better than people had hoped for. They hoped for a small reconnaissance vehicle and an ammunition carrier. But once the Jeep got in the field and the troops were using it, they found innumerable uses for it that the designers didn't conceive of.
A Jeep and ingenuity plus a borrowed ice cream freezer give American Third Army men their first ice cream on the Western Front. Salt for the freezing mixture and powdered this and that for the ice cream.
It was that handy, that useful. For instance, that flat hood on the original military Jeep. That flat hood was used as a poker table by the guys. It was used as an altar by the chaplain, and was quick, maneuverable, reasonably fast, good for, flat out, close to 60 miles an hour.
The Jeep vehicle of World War II era was a very Spartan vehicle.
The seats are not well cushioned, and the springs are very stiff. They're meant for battle, not for comfort.
Part of the adventure was that they were not easy to drive. They left you black and blue in all kinds of, fortunately, generally hidden places.
During the Battle of the Bulge, at a checkpoint, a Belgian soldier stopped the Jeep carrying 3 men in U.S. Army uniforms and promptly put them under arrest. And he was asked afterwards, "How did you know they were spies?" Well, he said, the American colonel was sitting in the back, and the aide was driving. The colonel never sits in the back. The colonel drives, and the aide sits alongside him in the passenger seat. The colonel isn't going to sit in the back because the way it rides, it gives him, how you say, the piles.
It started out with a variety of names.
It was GP, general purpose, a general purpose vehicle.
Blitz Buggy, Nap, Peep, Leaping Lena, Puddle Jumper. And for a year, the Dodge half-ton command car was called the Jeep by common consensus. But the little quarter-ton took over that name.
The name Jeep, going back to World War II, came from 2 possible different sources. One was the little animal that Popeye used to have. And that came out, I think, in 1937. And the animal was named Jeep. It was orange with black spots, and Jeep could do anything. Go up, down, frontwards, backward. There was nothing that the animal couldn't do.
The cartoon character was a feisty, kind of robust guy.
And it very much reminded the soldiers of the quarter ton. The Jeep vehicle was christened the Jeep by the soldiers themselves. It was not the name as much as the performance of the vehicle and the affection with which the soldiers held the vehicle. The Jeep vehicle was more than something to get from here to there. The Jeep was a trusted friend to the soldier. A lot of the soldiers thought their Jeeps did have souls. They depended on them, treated them well, and the Jeep paid them back in return.
I can't think of any other inanimate object that has engendered as much affection as the World War II Jeep vehicle. Affection.
And in Chicago, more than 1 million sing and dance in the streets. Joy is unconfined.
Jeep became an American hero, and then it entered civilian life unlike any other automotive brand ever before. The free sample. At the end of conflict, actually what happened is the armed forces left 600,000 Jeeps around the world. So Jeep became an international brand via free sample.
Despite the Jeep vehicle's enormous popularity on the battlefield during the war, during peacetime, most Americans weren't in the market for a vehicle that looked and drove like a warhorse.
Most Americans would want to forget anything to do with the war after the war. Americans wanted a family sedan after the war. They wanted the comfort that they missed during the war in those heavy, rough-riding trucks. Americans were looking for a boulevard cruiser.
At that time, they weren't thinking of the four-wheel drive vehicle or the sport utility vehicle. They were thinking of urban lifestyles, suburban lifestyles, rebuilding lives. People were more concerned about going to the drive-in theater than they were about going fishing.
Back in the 40s or the 50s, if you were driving for fun, you were driving on the highway or backcountry roads. You weren't driving off-road. That would have been considered silly.
Jeepers, that's just what I need. And that's what I got, a Jeep. We use it for everything. Tow car, wrecker. We carry the tools and equipment to fix a man up on the road.
Willis's post-war strategy was as simple as it was specific. The company knew exactly what kind of vehicle their Jeep was and to whom to target their rugged, dependable four-wheel drive workhorse.
One time a truck salesman told me his truck would go over any kind of road there is. I said, how about where there ain't no road? He says, there ain't no such truck. I said, yes, there is. The four-wheel drive Jeep truck.
Willys Overland targeted the farm and agricultural market for the Jeep. They were deemed to be a tractor, a truck, a power source, but out in the field. They were certainly not vehicles that you'd care to be seen in around town.
Willys had a lot of foresight in the sense of knowing that there would be a post-war market for this vehicle. Even before the war ended, development was already underway for a civilian Jeep, the CJ.
What they did was they took advantage of the experience in the war to make a better product.
They moved away from the military-style headlights. The headlights developed a more civilian, if you will, trim item around them, a trim ring. The vehicle lost a lot of its military hardware.
They gave it larger headlights. They moved the spare tire from the back of the vehicle to the right side, and that made it possible to put a tailgate in. They gave it more front legroom, which it needed. Of course, they got more front legroom at the expense of the guy in the back, but the back wasn't anything you ever wanted to ride in anyway if you could help it.
How do I like the station wagon? Ask the family. We've got quite a truck farm here. I don't know how we'd get along without it.
The Willys wagon was a wonderful post-war invention. It was the first real sport utility vehicle.
First and foremost, it was America's first all-steel station wagon, which doesn't sound like that big a deal until you understand the history of station wagons. Before the war, station wagons were a very small market. They were wood-bodied because nobody could afford to tool up a steel body for something that didn't sell in very large numbers.
Wood required a lot of maintenance. The all-steel body, on the other hand, had the look of wood through an ingenious paint scheme, but none of the maintenance headaches.
Then later the kids will wash it out good with water and a broom, slip the extra seats in, and we'll all be off to the movies.
The Jeepster was a true Phaeton. It had a convertible top. It doesn't have side windows. It's got these plastic side curtains like the British sports cars. It's got big open fenders. It's got a stick shift. It's got manual steering. And you drive it, and it's got a vintage feel, and it smells of burning oil and gasoline.
The Jeepster was marketed to the young at heart, to college kids, to young couples.
And it's so easy for a woman to handle. It's really fun to drive.
The Jeepster was a vehicle without any real function, but it was a fun vehicle. It was a vehicle designed to take the work out of Jeep vehicles and put recreation and pleasure into the name.
The Kaiser Industries had their own car company, Kaiser Fraser, and it was just about ready to go out of business. And Mr. Kaiser could not stand the thought of failure. And so what he decided to do to prop up his auto empire was to buy a successful company, and there weren't too many of them available.
Kaiser's acquisition of Willis Overland in the early 1950s resulted in a significant leap forward for Jeep engineering and technology. The new J-Series of Gladiator pickups and Wagoneer station wagons was introduced during this time, as well as the forward control truck and the Jeepster Commando. But for off-road enthusiasts of the brand, it was Kaiser's new civilian Jeep vehicle which made the strongest impression.
The CJ5 was an improved version of the original CJ, and it was a more civilized vehicle.
Heaters were introduced as an option. A right-side windshield wiper was introduced as an option.
The styling was better. It was a little bit wider. It was a little bit longer. It had more interior room. It rode better.
The CJ5 had a little bit more power than the old flat fender. They pumped up the hood to fit the taller engine underneath it and rounded out the fenders. The CJ5 got people acquainted with the Jeep as a recreational vehicle.
No longer simply a workhorse or perceived as a brute, the Jeep vehicle became the great escape machine.
Jeepers Jamboree started here in Georgetown in 1953. A group of Rotarians and local business people did something to try and help stimulate the economy. When we started our first Jamboree, we only had 55 Jeeps and 150 people. And we went around, and everybody we knew that had a Jeep, we begged them to go. And then, of course, after our first trip, it was such a success that the next year we didn't have the problems.
Very much a part of the American culture is our appreciation for the great outdoors, for the outdoor experience, for frontiers, for exploring. The Jeep became the ideal vehicle for realizing those goals.
I think it's the challenge of it. Adventure, sport, all these kinds of things together. It's rather like when you ride a Jeep, you're not really driving it, you're riding it. You're riding on it rather than in it. You're atop this thing which has been stripped down completely. There's no doors, no sides, no top, the windshield's folded down. You're really riding on a platform. And it is the most amazing feeling.
The experiences that people have when they're off driving, we talk about those sometimes as being extraordinary or peak experiences. That is, that they're emotionally intense. They push their boundaries a little bit. By going where people haven't been before, you feel a sense of individuality, okay? You feel a sense of being unique, that I can do things other people can't do.
Jeep had a designer on retainer. He was an independent, a fellow out in Milwaukee by the name of Brooks Stevens. He signed on with Willys Overland in 1943. He stayed on until 1969.
Brooks Stevens designed the Wagoneer, and it was a wonderful vehicle because it was comfortable, it was stylish, and still it was as practical as the Jeep as in terms of getting where you wanted to go over rough terrain and so forth.
They took a plain performing vehicle and started wrapping it with some comfort items.
all of a sudden you had a four-door sport utility vehicle, where before they had always been two-door vehicles.
The Jeep Wagoneer introduced the use of automatic transmissions, air conditioning,
comfortable seats, power brakes. It just bristled with innovation, and it was good looking.
That's the real beginning of the sports utility vehicle, because it'll go anywhere like a Jeep. It'll do anything a Jeep will do, and it'll provide a reasonably comfortable ride for the family.
When American Motors bought out Kaiser, not everybody in the industry thought that was a terrific idea. Roy D. Chapin Jr. was the chairman of the board of American Motors. One of the industry watchers, the magazine Dunn's Review, called it Chapin's Folly. On his own staff, he had some of his top lieutenants that frankly had looked over the business and said, we don't want to get involved in this. We have enough problems already. We don't need to go out and buy more.
Jeep, for example, is an unqualified success worldwide. It has reaffirmed its position as the premier name in four-wheel drive vehicles.
Quadratrack is now on every Wagoneer. This rally-winning four-wheel drive system with automatic transmission, power steering, and the 360 V8 are now standard.
Quadratrack, introduced in the mid-1970s, was a milestone.
Quadratrack was the first full-time four-wheel drive, where you didn't shift back and forth between two-wheel and four-wheel.
The system afforded full four-wheel drive without the driver having to get outside and turn in manual locking hubs or play around with levers or anything else.
I don't believe you would have your modern sports utility vehicle without some such device as Quadratrack.
Why don't you go someplace where no one has ever been before? All you need is the Jeep. It's got guts, rugged Jeep guts.
The 1974 Jeep Cherokee was a marketing wonder, because the 1974 Jeep Cherokee basically was the same Wagoneer that had come out in 1963. It used the same body. There were very few panels changed on that. It was a two-door wagon, and what American Motors did is they marketed it better, they packaged it better, they merchandised it better than anybody had ever done before.
We'll never make it. Wow! My Jeep Cherokee can go anywhere, especially when two-wheel drive wagons are snowed in. That's why I'm the most popular mom in Jeep country.
The popularity of the Cherokee was exceptional. It was immediately perceived as a vehicle that could be used by people in urban, suburban, and rural settings.
They put big wheels on it, they put big fender flares, they put stripes on it, they put beautiful upholsteries in there, and they marketed it as a family sport wagon. And my God, what an idea that was. And people looked at it, and men and women alike said, that's a terrific idea.
Perhaps the most spectacular and exciting use of the strange little vehicle that carried troops all over the world is its highly modified offspring known as the sand dragster.
The Jeep has evolved as life has evolved. It's very difficult to imagine where the Jeep has come to today from its humble beginnings as a rather crude utility vehicle.
Yes, and it's still Jeep four-wheeling for work, where endurance and dependability really pays off.
American Motors introduced new Jeep vehicles like the Comanche pickup truck and the V8-powered CJ7. Loaded with such amenities as automatic transmission and Quadratrack, AMC's CJ7 was the most popular Jeep vehicle to ever come out of the CJ series.
Wow, look at this. Wow, this is tough.
By the late 1970s, American Motors was building more Jeep vehicles than ever and selling them not only in the United States, but to off-road enthusiasts all over the world.
There's a feeling you can get only in a
In 1984, AMC stunned both consumers and the automotive industry alike with the introduction of the XJ Cherokee, the world's first four-door, compact, four-wheel drive sport utility vehicle. American Motors was also committed to creating a new Jeep vehicle, which promised to build on the high-tech advances of the Cherokee while maintaining the brand's legendary off-road durability.
The 1987 Jeep Wrangler was significant in that it was the first new small Jeep since the CJ5 came out. It had been over 30 years since an all-new Jeep of that size had debuted. And if you look at the vehicle, it doesn't look all that much different from the CJ5 or the CJ7. They look very similar, but there's a lot of engineering changes, primarily in the areas of ride and handling.
While the YJ Wrangler preserved most of the powertrain and design engineering features of the earlier CJ models, it introduced the idea of comfort.
The new Wrangler had much better body fits, particularly in the area of door fit and top fit. It had a lot less wind noise, less water leakage. It was just a better built vehicle.
I think part of the appeal of the Wrangler is that it's more closely connected to how Jeeps used to be, to the old World War II Jeeps. And if you throw enough mud and enough dirt over them and sort of squint and sort of narrow your eyes and blur your vision a little bit, you could almost imagine that they are World War II Jeeps.
Despite the popularity of the new Wrangler, not everyone was quick to embrace this latest model.
When you get down to the purists, the rock jumpers, the people that I say have mud in their blood, they took one look at the new Wrangler and said, I don't like it. This is an outrage. What have you done to my Jeep?
The Wrangler, when it first came out, I had the square headlights. And a lot of people did not like that. They said if it had square headlights, it was not a Jeep.
The only thing that they never would accept were those rectangular headlamps. And you would go to different car shows, and these guys would show up with T-shirts that said, real Jeeps have round headlights.
And Chrysler's recent acquisition of the legendary Jeep will add another dimension and put Chrysler in every segment of the market.
You have to be willing to go with your gut, to go with your vision in the auto business. Lee Iacocca had great vision. He had the vision to buy American Motors when most people were saying, why would you want to buy American Motors?
I am absolutely convinced that Lee Iacocca knew exactly what he wanted, that he bought AMC so that he could get his hands on Jeep.
I was quite nervous coming in as a Jeep guy and AMC guy that within a few years my Jeep vehicles would start to look like K-cars and feel like K-cars. The concern was that Chrysler will try to make Jeep a standard Chrysler product, mix it into the Chrysler brand, take away the Jeep history, the Jeep uniqueness, the Jeepness, if you would.
When Jeep became a part of Chrysler, at first it was a honeymoon period when everybody is getting to know each other and everybody is happy. And then the realities of the business popped up. And somewhere, I don't know who, somebody said, gee, you know, we could take a Jeep product and change the front fenders and the hood and call it a Dodge and sell it through the Dodge organization.
But cooler heads prevailed. Bob Lutz, Francois Castang, Lee Iacocca. I think some of the guys really saw the value in the Jeep brand and the history and the excitement and said, no, this thing has to stay unique. We'll quietly put a Pentastar on an emissions label under the hood, but you know, we're not going to make this Jeep from Chrysler or the Chrysler Jeep. It will remain Jeep.
For the consumer, Chrysler's acquisition of Jeep was of great benefit. Chrysler's capacity for engineering went way beyond anything that AMC was capable of doing. Chrysler was able to bring in a better parts network distribution. Chrysler was able to bring in a better service network.
Everybody that works on Jeep is a caretaker of the brand. I mean, you know, no matter how long you work on it, you have a responsibility to not only keep the success going, but here you have an inanimate object that people love.
In March 1990 in Toledo, the 1 millionth Jeep XJ rolled off the assembly line, a Jeep Cherokee Limited. In its 7 years of production, not only had the Cherokee become the preeminent vehicle of its kind, but it was also Chrysler Corporation's best-selling export to Europe. Meanwhile, at Chrysler headquarters, a team of maverick Jeep designers and engineers were busy sketching, drawing, and dreaming up yet another reincarnation of the Jeep vehicle, the all-new mysterious Jeep, codenamed ZJ.
As journalists, we heard rumors of a possible V8 engine. We knew now that the Grand Wagoneer was gone forever. The full-size J-truck platform, traditional Wagoneer with its V8 engine, was history. What would replace it?
The Jeep Grand Cherokee lifted the bar for the burgeoning sport utility market. While other sport utility vehicles were built from truck platforms, the all-new Grand Cherokee was designed, engineered, and built from the ground up as an SUV. To help the Grand Cherokee achieve its goals, Chrysler decided to pull out all the stops. The company invested a total of $1 billion in constructing and preparing the Jefferson North Assembly Plant in the heart of Detroit.
When the Grand Cherokee came out, it exploded on the market. It was such a dramatic vehicle. What was different about the Grand Cherokee is that it did drive like a car, but rather than drive like a Chevy or a Ford, it drove like a BMW. The handling was just unbelievable.
The Grand Cherokee really created the upscale luxury sport utility market. We launched it in 1992, and everyone has followed suit. Lexus, BMW, Mercedes, they're all there now trying to compete with the Grand Cherokee.
One of the first magazines to test the new Grand Cherokee said, in one fell swoop, the Ford Explorer has become yesterday's news.
Despite the success of the ZJ Grand Cherokee, the Jeep brand was not content to rest on its laurels or its reputation as being the leader in four-wheel drive design, engineering, and production. In 1997, the world's first and most successful sport utility vehicle was still not finished, reinventing, rediscovering, and recreating itself.
The big challenge with any Jeep is to continually improve it, to make different systems better than previous generations, but without losing the off-road capability that is at the heart of the Jeep legend.
The Wrangler is the soul of Jeep. It's the icon of Jeep. It's the American hero. It's the original. And anytime you do anything with starting at the CJs and then evolving to Wrangler, you have an awful lot of people looking over your shoulder.
When the Wrangler came out in '97, the purists among Jeep aficionados took it out immediately off-road and pronounced it the best Jeep ever.
Action and adventure. It's the stuff that sets Jeep owners apart from all others.
Each time a new Jeep vehicle was introduced, the brand's popularity grew. And in such consumer events as Jeep Jamboree, Camp Jeep, and Jeep 101, Jeep owners from all walks of life soon discovered they were members of a very exclusive club.
One of the things that we noted among Jeep owners were particular benefits that they enjoyed that other brand owners don't. And it has to do with bonds that they form. There's a sense of kinship that they share, that Jeep owners can relate to one another in ways that probably Ford Taurus owners can't. When you're driving down the highway in your Wrangler and another Wrangler's coming towards you, just lift the hand up just a little bit, just like that, and say, it's a salute.
All new 1999 Jeep Grand Cherokee.
With the introduction of the 1999 Grand Cherokee, Jeep confirmed its position as the most award-winning 4x4 in automotive history. The Grand Cherokee's quadra-drive four-wheel drive system helped seal Jeep's engineering and technological dominance in the sport utility market. And the legendary journey continues. No longer just an American icon, Jeep is now one of the most recognized brands in the world, with sales in more than 100 countries. In addition to the United States, Jeep vehicles are now assembled in Austria, China, Indonesia, Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, and Egypt. And the brand is still growing, changing, stretching new muscles, testing the limits, forever challenging expectations of what the world's premier sport utility vehicle can do, and how far it can go.
There are two types of people in America. There are people who own Jeeps, and there are people who wish they own Jeeps. Everybody deep down inside would really like to own a Jeep vehicle. And that's a sort of loyalty and the sort of longing, the sort of desire that you don't find in most vehicles. That's the sort of thing that Jeep has. It's priceless. It's the crown jewels.